All right, we'll go ahead and get started here. Share my screen. Okay. Well, everybody, thank you for coming today. My name is Seth Cousins. I'm the product manager here at Cireson, product manager for the PowerShell activity that we'll be looking at today, as well as for the Service Manager portal and the Configuration Manager portal. Today we'll be focusing on the PowerShell activity and our webinar, How to Enhance Automation with the Cireson PowerShell activity. My information is on the screen there. Make sure everybody can see that. Okay. And first of all, we'll hop into a little bit about Cireson and what we do and the areas we work in. So Cireson is actually currently in 63 different countries. We have over 1,200 customers, and over the last 4 years, we've done over 43,000 consulting hours. We've got 3 million plus licensed end users at this time, and our renewal rate currently is around 99%, which is awesome. So we do our best to make sure that we can meet our customers' needs, and obviously that's not always possible, but we'll continue to strive to do that in the best and most efficient way that we can. Looking at a few of our fans, we've got government entities, we've got healthcare, legal, manufacturing, just about any sector. We have customers that are in that sector that we're working for or with. They either use our software, we do consulting with them, or they are current customers. We've got a number of solutions. So we have Service Manager, Asset Management, Configuration Management based solutions. Our Service Management solutions is based off of our Service Manager portal and then stems from there. We also have a number of console applications for Service Manager, and one of those is the PowerShell activity that we'll be looking at today. We also have Asset Management, and that Asset Management sits within the Service Manager portal and then also within the Service Manager console. It can actually pull data from the Configuration Manager console and your Configuration Manager environment in order to bring in that software and hardware asset data. And then now we have our Configuration Manager portal, which was just recently released, which allows you to have that HTML5 web-based approach to configuration management as well. If you haven't viewed the webinar or looked at anything on the Configuration Management portal and you guys are using Configuration Manager, I'd suggest to take a look at that. So with that out of the way, let's hop into a little bit about the PowerShell activity. So the idea around the PowerShell activity is to really simplify small-scale automation within Service Manager. So there's no need for connectors. The scripts are written and stored right within Service Manager itself, right within the Service Manager console. We do provide syntax highlighting, and the response times are noticeably faster because all the scripts are being run by the Service Manager workflows. So that's one of the reasons why it's best for small-scale automation, is because this provides a convenience factor. But for a lot of automation and larger scale, longer running automation, you'll want to use something like Orchestrator or Azure Automation, as those are systems designed very specifically for that sort of functionality. This is more of a quick use automation approach using local PowerShell on the workflow server. I basically just talked about the simplified infrastructure. Basically, the infrastructure for this is a PowerShell script configuration item, and then a PowerShell script activity, and you can put those within your service requests, change request workflows, and it provides this automation. It's pretty easy to debug. We output the errors to the console. You also have the capability of writing log statements. Pretty much anything you can do in PowerShell you can do in here. There's a few limitations just because of the way the Service Manager console works. We'll discuss just a couple of those today, but for the most part, if you can do it in PowerShell, you can do it here. It's just running your PowerShell script. And then you can also, because it's within Service Manager, it's easy to set up native notifications right within Service Manager, subscription-based notifications that can notify you when there's an error, a problem with the script, when the script completes successfully, when certain scripts complete or when a script is used notifying a certain subset of users. We'll go through a brief example of that today in the demo. But because it's all within Service Manager, you have the full functionality of Service Manager and the Service Manager console at your disposal. So this is part of our business management solution. It also comes in a few of our other smaller streams, but primarily this is our larger stream. This includes service management, asset management, and our essentials management. So it's basically all the different streams that we provide. This will be a part of that. And those also include things like the analyst portal, the Outlook console, our new analytics engine, and survey app. And of course the advanced request offering. On the asset management side, you've got our asset management, you've got asset Excel and asset import. And then for the essentials side, it's going to be all of our console applications, things like My Active Work Items, Group Assign, Notify Analyst, and Release Calendar. And of course, the PowerShell activity is included within that particular suite of products. The whole purpose of this is to empower your IT team. So we work here at Cireson. We produce this software basically to give you different options on how to best manage your IT infrastructure, your service management practice. So we try and reach across the organization, everywhere from the IT manager and end user all the way up to a director, IT director or CIO. Really, we try and provide at least some form of support or software or utilize it, or automation or whatever across that entire stream so that each of those people can benefit from this technology all in one place. So I think we do a pretty good job of that from end to end. And of course, we have a lot of focus on the actual IT analyst, as that is a large part of your help desk. And then of course, a lot of this is presented to the end user in a way that's easy and intuitive for them to use. One of the more recent apps that we have that relates to this only in that it provides you with the ability to migrate your PowerShell scripts from one environment to another, the Lifecycle management application, which was recently released. You'll be able to use that, and these PowerShell scripts and PowerShell activities will be able to be brought over using that tool. So this gives you the ability to develop your scripts inside your test or dev environment, and then once they've been tested and they look good and they're working well, you can then push them forward into your production environment and then just make small tweaks from there based upon environmental differences. We also provide enterprise consulting. I'm also the practice lead here at Cireson for our consulting teams. So one of the things that we provide is a deep level of knowledge around Service Manager, Asset Management, Configuration Manager, and really PowerShell especially. And so this is a great tool for us, and we've been pushing for this as well on the consulting side so that we can get this into play for our customers, and provides us with a quick and easy way of developing some PowerShell-based automation for them during our engagements without really eating into that engagement time. So we're really looking forward to utilizing this for our customers as well. So now with all the paperwork out of the way, let's go ahead and move into the demo, which is my favorite part. So I'm going to hop over here to my other screen. Wait for it to come up. All right. So first we'll look at the, hold on one second, make sure this is set up correctly. Okay, so first we'll look at the settings of the PowerShell activity. We'll also look at the basics of setting up a PowerShell script, setting up a template, which is optional, and then running a PowerShell activity, and then looking at the output of that PowerShell activity. So that's where we'll start. So first, I've already installed the PowerShell activity. It's a DLL and management pack. So once you download those, you simply install the management pack and copy the DLL over. This will provide you with the settings. So bear with me today, my lab environment's running just a little bit slow for whatever reason. So you can see here in our settings we have the Cireson PowerShell activity settings, and we have the ability to set our log file location here in the settings. And then we also have in progress workflow delay. So once it switches to a manual, once the activity sets to in progress, there's a 30-second delay before the activity actually runs the PowerShell script. This provides you with the capability of slowing down the run so that if you have other things that are happening prior to this, orchestrator run flows, notification structure, those sorts of things, they're going to be able to fire off appropriately beforehand. So with that in mind, we also have a manual trigger on a PowerShell script where you can run the script manually if you desire from the activity, and this provides a setting for the delay on the manual run of that. All right, so after we have it all installed and we've looked at our settings, the first thing we can do is we can go to the library portion here, and we'll have a PowerShell scripts section underneath here. So looking at the PowerShell scripts section, we have three primary views. We have the all PowerShell scripts view, then we have the draft PowerShell scripts view, and the published PowerShell scripts view. So the idea here being that you can only see PowerShell scripts in the selector box of an actual PowerShell activity if the script has been published and not draft. So when a script is in draft and set in draft by an admin, you won't see that in the activity box, so you can't add a script that's not ready. So we'll look at our all PowerShell scripts here. All right, so you can see that I have three scripts here for today's demonstration. I've got an unlock AD user account script, a generate a script error, and then copy work item information to activity and get work item information. You can see at the published status and all these is true. If I wanted to remove that, it's simply open up the PowerShell activity, PowerShell script, sorry. And this is our PowerShell script form. You can see that we have some general information, the title of the PowerShell script object, a description should you desire, the ability to publish and unpublish, and then we also have the PowerShell script itself, including syntax highlighting, and a history of the object to include edits. Now, you can do, this does provide syntax highlighting. It makes it easy to read. This is not your PowerShell ISE, so it doesn't provide all of the syntax support that you would expect. So I would not recommend developing your script in here. I would recommend developing your script inside the PowerShell ISE, as this is going to provide you with all sorts of additional functionality and benefits, including easier test runs, those sorts of things. Once it's running in here, then you would bring it over into here and test it out. So that's the basics of the script. I'm going to leave this one published so that we can use it. So we have our scripts here. You can see that I don't have any in draft looking in the all, so I should not see any in this particular view. So no items found. This view is empty. If I look in my published view, you can see I have all four of my scripts there as well as what we saw in the all PowerShell scripts. So with that in mind, we will work through a couple of these, and I'll do a couple demonstrations. One of the things that you might desire to do is set up a template for a particular PowerShell script activity. So we set this up so that the scripts are actually separated from the activities so that you could have multiple scripts, use them across different activities that have different titles and descriptions and those sorts of things, so they're not directly tied to templates. This has the added benefit that once you add a script to a template, that script is actually copied into the template, and so that template will stay that way even if somebody goes in and changes the script later. This also has the benefit of maintaining the script that was run when a service request is run. And yes, the word I was looking for is IntelliSense, but I was missing the ability to pull that up. So looking at this here, we have our lab scripts here. So here's my templates that I have today. So I've got a template for copy work item description to activity description, unlocking a related user template, and unlocking a user account template. So let's take a look at this one here. So you can see that this is a template, so it comes up with my template view. It's already been created, so I'm good to open it. Go ahead and open this up. So here we have a template for our PowerShell activity. Now this is the activity, not the script. So you can see that there is some major differences in terms of how it lays out, but it does look similar. Being an activity, we have our parent work item section, all the basic information you'd expect from an activity. We have our title and description, our area and stage, and then who the activity can be assigned to. Obviously, this is not a required field, but should you assign this to somebody, it allows you to have somebody that can be notified when these particular scripts fail or when there's issues with these particular scripts. Looking at the PowerShell script section, this is actually where you go and select the script that you'd like to use. So if I click here, you can see that I have all my scripts available to me, assuming that they are published. If they're not published, they will not be available on this list. But so from here, I can actually select one of these scripts, say for instance, get work item information, and it loads the script into this template. It also provides us with ability to pull out the different properties. So once we load a script, it reads this parameter section of the script, and it will actually fill those in down here. And we can then select properties from the parent work item and the activity, the PowerShell activity itself, in order to fill in those parameters. So these will be passed at runtime once it goes to in progress, and then once it runs, these parameters are then passed into this, and you can then use these parameters inside your script. So you can see that I can set this one to the parent base ID, and then from here I would get the GUID or the unique ID for that parent, and then I can use SNlets to grab the actual object, and then I write some output based off of that. So we'll take a look at that here in a second. When you actually run the script, this output section will be filled in with the output that's produced by the script. We also, of course, have the usual ability to add affected configuration and affected services to the script, and of course to relate other items and other various types to the script, which we'll use later, and then of course the history. So I don't want to manipulate this template, so we'll go ahead and close that out. So as I mentioned, these are templates, so you saw how we can use a template. We can actually do this in real time. We can add a PowerShell script activity default, and then we can pick the script we want when we're actually creating a service request. So we'll take a look at that now. Jump over to our service request section here. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new service request. So this finishes loading here. All right, so I'm going to go create a new service request from a template. I'm actually just going to choose my default service request, default template. So it doesn't really have much information in it. Go ahead and add some information in. Set my required properties. And then we'll look at the activity section. So in the activity section, default service request, I have both an RA and an MA. For this first run, I'm going to remove both of those. I'm going to add a PowerShell activity. And from here, I can actually change which script we're using. So I have the ability to use the get work item information or copy work item information to the activity itself. So we'll do this one first. We'll stick with the get work item information. Looking at the bottom, the parent base ID is already in there because that was set within the template. No output, of course, because it has not run. No need for related items at this point. So we'll go ahead and assign this to myself. And then go ahead and run that. So finish creating the service request. Okay. Now the service request will be created and we can wait for it to go in progress. Since there's no trigger, there's no activities that will get in the way of it running straight through, the workflow engine will go ahead and run through all those different processes for us. So we can see the request. It's right there. While we're waiting for that one to go ahead and run, we'll go ahead and do another one. This time we'll use a different script. So assign this to myself again. And so we want to bring some of this information over to the activity itself. So right now we're just doing the description. So looking at that, we'll go ahead and go to the activities here. We'll leave the review activity in this time. Actually, we'll look at that later. So we'll speed up the process by not doing that. Go ahead and add another default PowerShell. Underneath the script, we're going to do the copy work item information script. You can see that this one here has the GUID and activity GUID that are required, and they come in via the parameters. And what it does is it takes the parent object and then it updates the activity object with the description from the parent object. So going down here, we'll set the parent base ID, and then we'll set the activity base ID. So that those parameters will now be passed in. No other information needs to be set this time. Go ahead and save that. And moving forward. Click OK and let that run. While we're waiting for these, the one's probably run, but for real quick, I'll answer a couple questions. So get rid of that one. Do you see this replacing runbooks and SMA? No, I do not. Primarily for the reasons that I stated earlier, that it's not a full-blown automation platform. This is Service Manager using the Service Manager workflows to run small-scale automation. So really, this is ideal for one-stop script running. So if it's a script that runs quickly and performs one primary task, then this is a great tool and it works great. If you're running tons and tons of scripts, or it's a script that does multiple things and waits for feedback and has all these other things that are going on, then that is much more suited to something like Orchestrator or Azure Automation or SMA. So really this is just another tool in the toolbox for service management automation, and it's a nice, easy to run tool, a very simplified structure. So great tool to have, but does not replace those very powerful tools that you already have in that toolbox in terms of SMA and Orchestrator. Would the PowerShell activity prefix be changed from the default AC to something like PS? No. The reason is because the AC activity already exists within Service Manager, and editing that is not something that made sense for us. We looked at that process. The PS actually is reserved for the PowerShell script itself. So the PowerShell script is actually going to be PS, but the activity itself we did not rename. So, and that has to do with the internal processes of Service Manager. I'm not saying it's not possible, but it was something that we didn't feel required the effort at the time. But like I said, the PowerShell script objects have the PS when created. So one of the scripts we're asking, would that last one copy to all child activities or just the PowerShell activity? So in this particular case, the script that I had, the script that I ran, would only copy to the actual activity itself, the PowerShell activity that is running that particular script, simply because that's the one I targeted in the script. So go ahead and refresh our page here. All right, so they all ran. Let's look at our completed service requests. All All right, so both of them completed successfully, so let's go ahead and open them up and look at the output. All right, looking at our activities, we can see that the activity ran successfully. Go ahead and open the activity up. And there's our script, and here's our output. So we can see it grabbed the title from our service request, or the parent activity. There was no description and there was no notes, so there was nothing for us to do there. And then we just had a simple testing output command. You can take a look back at the script here. This is this command right here. Just testing to see if we can write what we would like to the output stream without using any particular thing, such as the write output command. This is more of a best practice, but what we're demonstrating here is that this is not required to simplify smaller scripts. So that worked great. Wrote our output. Not terribly useful in this particular scenario because you already have this information in the service request itself. But imagine grabbing information off of a user, or grabbing other information about a user and being able to put it into this output box. So something along the lines of users' email aliases and being able to grab those aliases and put them in here so that the analyst that comes back to look at this knows, or maybe the different contact information. So a lot of things that can happen that you can reach out to other systems really quickly, pull in some basic information and just drop them into this output section here instead of into other parts of the thing, other parts of the request in order to get the information that you need. So very basic demonstration, but something that has a lot of power and value. Go ahead and close this one and look at our other one. We have another question. The question is, where do you pass the variables from in order to use param GUID, activity GUID? Is it set behind the scenes? And then basically he's just saying the activity GUID. So those parameters are actually coming from the work item based property or activity based property class. So we're actually doing some of that behind the scenes, but you have to put the parameters that you want into your script using the param statement. So that param statement is actually how we define. So we parse that. When you load your script up, we parse the script for the param statement. If the param statement exists, then we parse through it and we pull out the different parameter values, and then we provide them in that box beneath, which we'll look at here in a second as an example. Provide them in the box beneath so that you can map values to them. So looking at this script here, if I scroll down, you can see that we parsed the params here. So we parsed this param section right here. We found the GUID param and the activity GUID param, and then it put them down in here. So I could name these differently, and they would still show up, and then I assign them when I first created the script. Right now, because it's run, this is all static. I can't do anything with this. Looking at our PowerShell output, there is no output because there shouldn't be, but if I look in the general section here, what we did was we copied the service request description into the PowerShell activity description, and you can see that that worked successfully. So here is the information that we want to be carried over to the activity. Looking at the service request, that is the exact information that we had in the description. Slowly but surely, I will get there to show you. There we go. So copied that over. So that's great. It's a great way to bring information down, and you could walk through the activity tree if you wanted to. One great example of this that I've built specific runbooks for in the past is the ability to walk through a tree structure that's created during a service request from a template and assign different bits of information from the service request into activities that lie below it. And so you would actually be able to use PowerShell just to walk through the tree structure based off of just that parent ID. And you could then have an activity that falls immediately after the service request itself goes in progress that then sets up the service request, copying the information down to the different parts of the activity, the service request structure through the whole workflow. and that would provide whatever required information for each of those manual activities or automated activities that would occur after this initial initialization activity, if you will. So there's some very basic use of this structure. So I've shown you basic script examples, writing ticket information in the output window, and then also updating information based on the parent ticket, or just updating information on the ticket itself, which we can look at those scripts here again in a little bit. But then the next thing is a more advanced script example. A very useful thing for anybody is the ability to unlock a user's account that may have locked themselves out. So you want an analyst to be able to unlock them, or maybe a fellow IT employee to be able to unlock them, but you maybe want to have an approval process behind that, or at the very least tracking the fact that that account needs to be unlocked. So right now what I'm going to show you is how we can do a request offering in the service management portal that a user can come in and request to have another user unlocked, say an analyst or a friend or a fellow coworker or whatever. They have access to the self-service portal, they can request to have that account unlocked. And then it will go through an approval process, and then the account will be unlocked. So let's first look at the setup for this scenario. So let me shrink this here. What I have here is I have a PowerShell window, and it's simply showing you that I have this user here, Ari Goldfinger, James Bond supervillain. He has been locked out of the system, and I am silly, so I want to allow him access to my system. If we look at it, we can see that he's still locked out. So his account is currently locked out based off of Active Directory. So that's all the relevant information we need there. Now we'll go ahead and go through this process here. Refresh my session. Go to the home page. And here we have our service catalog, which I only have one offering, and that's Active Directory Services. Underneath Active Directory Services, I can unlock an AD user account. So go ahead and click that. It takes me to my request form. Here I want to select good old Ari. I'm even going to assign it to Ari as the request on behalf of him. I want to unlock his account. One thing you could do is you could simplify this entire structure. You could have unlock AD user account. You could do a request on behalf of, and your PowerShell activity could actually look at the requester instead of at what I'm doing here, which is a related configuration item. I'm attaching this user in the request offering to the PowerShell activity so that the PowerShell activity always knows where to look just on top of itself, basically. So I'm simplifying the structure, but there's many ways you could make this same sort of process work and maybe even simplify it. So from there, I'm going to go ahead and click Save. It's going to create my request, create the service request behind it, create the PowerShell script using a template, and assign Ari as the related configuration item to that. So we'll wait for that to come up. Go ahead and hop over to the SR itself here in the portal. So we can see I have my service request here. It's still new, has not yet gone to in progress, and basic information. If we look at my activities, we have a review activity, and then we have a PowerShell activity, which is here. So the unlock related user. You can see the basic activity information for that object. Go ahead and refresh this. All right, so my approval is in progress. Kind of look at this here, and clicking on it, I'm going to go ahead and approve this to unlock good old Ari, and we'll save. All right, so that approval is now in process. Refresh this page here. Sort by ID again. Let's go ahead and add the numeric ID to this column. And pull out this base ID. while we're waiting, go ahead and stop sorting on that one. There we go. Let's check here and see if it's been created. Well, I approved it and it might be done already. Let's look at, oh no, it's still done. So there's that one. Look at our open service requests, which it's not there. Uh, 4505. Well, it's a good example of a failed script. So we can see here I got a notification that my PowerShell activity failed. PowerShell activity has failed. Please review the script and workflow and rerun as necessary. So 4508 appears to have failed. So jump back to here. Activities 4508. Looks like I changed something in my template and set the generate script error template. So good example of how the workflow and internal notifications work. So while not intentional, we were going to get to that anyway. So we'll look at that right now. So what you saw there was you saw a notification that was sent by a failed PowerShell activity to a specified user account. All of that was based off of the Service Manager notification structure. So what I have is I have a subscription and a email template that are set up to let me know when there is a failed request. So looking in here, I can go ahead and find my subscriptions. Here's my PowerShell activity failure notification. Go ahead and open that up. So simple process. What I'm doing is I'm triggering on the PowerShell activity class. So I'm looking at Cireson PowerShell activity class, as that's where the failure will actually occur. And then I'm looking at some criteria. I'm looking at the status went from in progress to failed. So whenever the status of the PowerShell activity goes from in progress to failed, then we use this email template and we email these recipients. So both the user assigned the PowerShell activity, and then in this particular case, I'm also emailing myself just to make sure I always see those emails. So looking at that, we'll go ahead and look at the email template itself. Here's the PowerShell email template. Simple basic setup. Again, targeted class, PowerShell activity class. The benefit of this is, one, I can use that in the subscription that targets the same class, and two, that I can use the actual variables and properties from the PowerShell activity class. So looking at my template design, all I'm doing is grabbing the ID in this particular case and then saying that there's a PowerShell failure and what it was, and nothing super significant here. But you could, of course, have additional properties in there. You could have a link to the particular activity, say in the Cireson web portal. All sorts of things around that could be used and inserted just like you would any other notification. All right, so that's how that works, and let's take another brief glance at the failure notice. This is what the failure notice looks like. We see that it came in from the support to myself, included the information we just discussed, and there's the script information. All right, so now let's fix it. So going back to the library section, we'll look at our templates. So there'll be, all right, so templates, we should be using the unlock user account template. We can verify that by looking at our request offerings and our unlock AD user account request offering. And we are using the unlock user account template. All right, so that being said, let's go back to the template. All right, so unlock AD user account template. Load that up. Load up this, look at the script. So this script is accurate. Parent base ID. Information looks good. It's got the RA approval, unlock related. Let's make sure that that's titled correctly. Jump back here. Hope if I look in the right section too. This is actually the one. All right, so 4526 is the one we're actually looking at. So I showed you that, but I was looking at the wrong one anyway. So what we're actually looking at, so I actually did do it right. That's funny and embarrassing at the same time. All right, so we have here is our PowerShell script, which ran successfully. If we go back to our work items and we look at the completed work items, it just didn't show up before because I was looking at my work and the service request wasn't actually assigned to me. And so then that's why I couldn't find it initially, because I was looking in the wrong area. So you can see here we actually have 4524, which completed successfully. We can go ahead and open that up. You can look at the activities. We see it ran 4526, ran successfully, and then underneath here we have our PowerShell output, and I've got a number of output commands in there that give me a good status of what it's doing and what it's found at each step of the way. So we have the SR 4524 pulls in the AC activity, and then we find RE related to it. We grab the domain user class to make sure we get his actual AD directory username. We found the username, and then we unlock the AD account. We'll look at the script itself here in a second. Looking at our PowerShell for that, we can go back into here and check and see, and we can see that he is now no longer locked out. So the user has been successfully unlocked in the system. So let's take a quick look at our script. Again, we can look at it in here. It's a lot of stuff. I'm going to go ahead and copy it out of there into here. A little easier to see. So basically what we're doing in this particular script is we're passing in two parameters, and then we assign the parameters to the parent and to the activity. We make sure that the parameters were properly passed, and if not, then we write the error out and then exit the script. If they were properly passed, we move into the base body of the script. You can see that I created a little log function here. It's just a real simple function to make it very apparent what I'm doing and to help document through the process. So I don't have to do a write output every time. I can just do a simple log statement and pass the message. So from here, I'm actually passing a lot of this information in, keeping track of each of my steps, importing the module assemblets, and then I'm setting the DC, the domain controller that I'm going to use. Go ahead and read through, pull the two different objects that I need. From the SR, I get the related activity information, which I actually don't ever use this information right here in this particular script. I was going to and decided not to, but I left it in just for an example. But I actually just used the AC class itself, and since I related the user directly to the class, I'm getting the related user, and this is based off of related to configuration item relationship. So I look at objects with that particular relationship on the activity itself. Once I find that, if I don't find any users related, then I go ahead and catch that and I exit out, writing the error to the output. If I do find it, then I get the ID for that particular user. I pull the user out, I write some output, and then I pull the user object based off of a specific type of class. So here's where I'm doing the SCSM class, setting the domain user class in Service Manager, which has the username property on it. Once I have the username, I get that actual class itself, I get the user. Once I have the user, then I go ahead and I invoke a script on my DC. So I'm actually invoking this script on my DC here, which will load the Active Directory module and unlock the user account. So I don't actually have to have the Active Directory module installed on the workflow server. I just leave it on there and I just remote in and invoke that remote command. The only thing there is that the workflow account for Service Manager does need to have the appropriate permissions to both invoke a command on the DC and then also to be able to unlock an actual account. Otherwise, you could be passing the credentials into here. The problem, though, is that if you're passing the credentials in, you're defining them most likely inside the script. An alternative would be to define them in a place that the workflow service has access to and then reads them in from a file and doesn't ever display them in the script. So that way you don't have to have this workflow account doesn't actually have to have access, and on top of that, the script never shows the password and username. So there are ways to make this even more secure than it is already if you don't want to give the workflow account access to that service. All right. So I've shown you a number of ways this can be used, one of which probably more significant than the others. So with that, I'm going to run through our questions and answers here. So number of questions. So give me just a second to look through where we're at, and I will answer them. So Bill asks about defining my class in my SMLets, and is that something in your DLL does, or SMLets let you do that now without a class definition? If you're using an actual ID for a Service Manager object, if you're using an ID property, you do not need to define the class. It will give you the default class for that particular object. So that's always worked that way in Service Manager and in the SMLets, if you have the ID. If you don't have the ID and you're using any other information to pull it up, then you do need to define the class so it knows where to look. Another question, where do you pass the variables from? Okay, I answered that one already in terms of the parameters. So the parameters are set in the script itself, and then we parse the parameters in order to give you the ability to map those parameters to actual objects on the activity, or properties on the activity. When updating a PowerShell script directly, will this affect related SR templates, or is the PS script content stored within the template as a property? The content of the PowerShell script is actually stored within the template. So when you load the PowerShell script for the first time, then you pick it and you load it in, it actually copies that to the template itself so that other tweaks to the PowerShell script will not affect currently working and running workflows in the background. So you don't have to worry about that. Obviously, there's pluses and minuses to that. The minus is you can't centrally update every script that's been put into a template across the board just by editing it in one place. But the benefit of that is that you can edit it and not worry about affecting all those other locations. And on top of that, it also is maintained for audit history in terms of what was actually ran versus what the script is currently today. What is the expected time frame for support to people who installed SCSM on an alternate path? So what Brian is talking about there is that currently there's an error that occurs in the 2012 version if you installed Service Manager to an alternate path because it's trying to run the Service Manager commandlets, and that's not the SMLets, that's the Service Manager commandlets, but the same property works. There's a way around that in terms of you can actually import the module yourself, but we're actually going to remove, we already have a version in tests right now, but we're actually going to remove our default loading of the SMlets and the PowerShell commandlets. So we're going to remove loading the commandlets altogether. We're not going to do that for you. You'll do that in your script just like you would any other script. That way you can load them from wherever you want, and we're also not loading them unnecessarily if you're not going to use Service Manager specific commandlets anyway, which you may not be. So if that's the case, there's no reason for them to be loaded. So we're just going to remove that altogether. So you'll need to load those in your own script. Can we pass output to other activities? Sure you can. Basically, you would just write the output to the other activity as you so desire. So one thing is you could extend the PowerShell activity class with additional fields if you desired. It already has some fields, I believe, in it, just because the activity class itself does. It might be the runbook class. But either way, you could extend it, and then you could pass anything you want into those additional fields, and then use those in the PowerShell script of the other activity. So it really gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of being able to pass information around as it's processed and built. So yes, you could do that. If there's no input or tracking that's really required through that process though, and you have multiple steps like that, and those steps don't need to be seen by the end user, most likely a runbook and orchestrator is probably going to be a better bet for you if it becomes that complex where you're passing stuff between different activities. Does the PS execute on the workflow server import module? Okay, so I just answered that. Whether or not right now it does not load SMlets, it loads the native Service Manager commandlets. We will be removing that though in a version that should be coming out probably next week. So that will be removed, and it will no longer load that automatically for you. And the reason for that is because we need to know the path at the time, and you can't always get that information when you need it. So instead, we'll just allow the user in their scripts to load whatever modules or commandlets they prefer. Let's see. Yeah, so you'd just be importing them like Connor's other questions. Another question is run activity PowerShell. Yeah, so basically he's talking about the command to run it when you want to. You can't run it if the activity is pending because that activity may not have approval yet. And we don't want an analyst to be running an activity, the PowerShell script, when the script itself doesn't have approval yet. So that's why we don't allow it to be pending or null. So if there's no status or if there's a pending status, then it can't be run. If it's already been approved, then it should be able to be run. Will we be offering a library of common tasks? Not necessarily, but that is what the community is great at. So as people start to run through these things and build out their additional tasks, I'm sure there will be lots of discussion in the community around that, and you'll probably start to see a good number of tasks and examples of what does work and what doesn't. And of course, we'll be watching that as well so that we can continue to make improvements to the product and come out with later versions that have additional capabilities. So I think that answers all the questions that are up there currently. Jumping over here, speaking of the Cireson community, so we do have the Cireson community. If you have not been there before, I suggest that you check it out. It's community.cireson.com. It basically has a section for feature requests, which is where we pull most of the features that we put into the product nowadays, especially the more mature products that we have. You can get awards for top contributions. A lot of the community shares code on there with examples of extensions, customizations, things like that they've done. We share some of our own code structure and things that we've done. We also allow, I mean, basically it's there for you guys to connect and collaborate with other people within the Cireson community, and then also for us to interface with you in a useful and beneficial way for both you and us. And then some of the more popular areas on there are, of course, our cloud and password reset, asset management, and service management areas. And we also have the Cireson Innovator of the Month award. So we look at different customers throughout the Cireson family and pick out those that have done a large number of automation that we feel is beneficial to both themselves and to the community as a whole. And so we point that out and show who's doing very unique things within the service manager environment, configuration manager environment, and Cireson platform in particular. And with that, it is 1 o'clock, but for last thing to say is we do have a Cireson Configuration Manager Day coming up, and everybody here is invited. The link is there at the bottom of the screen, ity.bc/config manager day. And basically, it will run from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time on the 19th, and we'll have a number of webinars and sessions that are going specific to Configuration Manager and automation as well. And so you'll actually see, I'll actually be doing one of those, and it'll be based on automation around Configuration Manager and the Configuration Manager portal specifically, and how you can use it for things like webhooks, triggering Azure automation, those sorts of things, and integration into Service Manager even. So look forward to that. And with that, that is the end. So thank you all for coming. I appreciate your attentiveness as well, and I look forward to hearing and seeing you guys in the community. Thank you very much.